Vandaag hebben we te gast bij ons Emahmn. We gaan een 3-delige serie over hem uitzenden. Vandaag het eerste deel, het autobiografische gedeelte, over zijn leven. Het tweede deel zal gaan over het werk. En het derde deel zal gaan over de toepassingsmogelijkheden van alles waarover zijn werk gaat. Welcome in the Netherlands. I know that you're coming from a long, long way to reach here, up until where you are now. So can you tell something about where you are coming from?
Thank you very much for inviting me here. I'm coming from United States and I live usually either in California, Texas or North Carolina, but I travel a great deal. That's what I do. I travel, give workshops and talk about what I do.
And what kind of workshops you're giving?
I basically spent a great deal of time on a project. To be exact, I spent 18 years to develop the basics, and it's been 15 years now that I've worked after I developed the basics. And it has to do with how you could get in tune with yourself, how you could release the destructive patterns that they might get in the way and go back home or achieve godhood eventually.
And you are doing this through what kind of work? Can you say it in a few words? Because we will talk about this more in the second part of this shooting.
Yes. I basically design mandalas. If you want to know what mandalas are, I have 2 of them right on my jacket. So I spend a great deal of time discovering what are the basic source of life that we are in touch with, how this creation is put together. And I studied Hinduism, Kabbalah, and many other things that we will talk about later. And I discovered that the Hindus believe there are 5 universal energies, which they call tattvas, and everything in the universe is made of these energies. So I've spent a great deal examining them and combining them and recombining them and producing mandalas.
Okay, we will have a talk about that later.
All right.
And I know that you're always looking for the sources of everything.
Right.
Where did this all begin? Because I know you're not born in the United States. You're born in Iran.
Yes.
So can you tell me some more about where do you come from?
All right.
A long time ago.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I am, 17, 18 generations away from Muhammad. My parents, if you follow the tree of our life or our generations, it would wind up with Muhammad. Actually, what happened, Muhammad had only one child, a daughter, which married a man named Ali. Ali had 2 sons with this man, Hassan and Hussein, which they both were died or executed or murdered, however you want to say it. The younger one, Hussein, had gone to a war with a small group of people and fighting a very large army. And the army, the enemy, killed all of them except for this little boy that was very, very sick. And he lived to be my grandpappy. They didn't kill him, So this is my background. I'm direct descendant of Muhammad.
And what kind of father and mother you had?
All right, my parents and all my parents on both sides, they've been in education and metaphysics. They've been teachers.
Teachers in what?
Every kind that you could imagine, but especially teachers of metaphysics, religion, My father and my forefather, they would have classes that the people would come and they would train them. So as a child, when I was like 18 months old to about 4.5, that's when my 3.5, when my grandfather died, I would go run around in the middle of his class. And I learned later on, I remember a lot of his techniques. And I used a lot of his techniques in my own teaching. My mother was a meditator. She would get up 1:30 every morning, in the morning, and would take a bath, and right at 2 she would start meditating and repeating mantras till 6 a.m.
Can you tell something about what is a mantra? Because some people might not know this.
Yes. Mantras usually are holy names of God or some master that knew a great deal about how the subconscious mind works, put together a phrase that when you repeat it, it would release some of the negative patterns or destructive patterns or painful patterns that we have accumulated, say, last 10 million years.
So you are more or less raised with a religious background through your father, because he was a religious leader.
Yes.
And your mother
also
was already interested in mandala or in mantras. And
right.
Yeah.
Yeah, all my family, with no exceptions, aunts, uncles, grandfathers, great-grandfathers, as far you go up, and all the children, they're all into teaching or metaphysics. This is our legacy. That's everybody does. Yeah.
And were you raised by your parents? Did you live at home?
No, I did not. Actually, when I was about 5 years old, I told my mother that I didn't like her. And she looked into my eyes and told me that the feeling was mutual and I could leave anytime I want to.
And what age you were then?
5 years old. And the first opportunity that I had, I left. I went stayed with some people first, and then I stayed with my father, which lived in another town with another woman. And then whoever let me stay with them, and I went and stayed with them, and I have been continuing doing that until right now, which I'm staying with you now.
So, and did some stepmother raise you, or,
Yes, I had not one, but a lot of stepmothers, lots of them. But one particular, two or three of them, they made great deal of influence on my life. One of them very, very positively. She taught me lots about how you treat women, how you greet them, how you talk to them, how you make love to them. These are all before age of 7. And one of them was a math genius. She taught me how to add and subtract and divide before I went to school. And one of them that I spent many summers with, she influenced me in a totally different way. And unfortunately was not good. One night she was very, very depressed, and she committed suicide by jumping off the roof, and she was holding my hand. And as she jumped, she was taking me with me, but fortunately I hit a short wall and she let go and I stayed behind, and she fell down.
And what happened with you in the year or years after? Because someone died, which you loved much.
Yes, I loved her, and she was taking care of me. We slept together every night. And when she died, not only that she died, but also the way that the people behaved as though like nothing happened. Before that, I was a student. I was top of the class. And but by the time Christmas came, I was failing all my classes, including PE, because I was not participating. And as the result, when June came, I was told that I have to stay behind 1 year.
So is it like this that you, because of the death of your stepmother, were kind of losing your capacity to be the best of the class and not interested anymore because you were sad, not willing to go?
Well, that really had great deal with it, especially when you are a child and you don't know any technology to release this, so you feel guilt. I felt tremendous amount of guilt. If I could have done that, why I didn't scream, why I didn't hold her back. I mean, all these things went through my head over and over and over. I would go to bed every night and cry till I fell asleep, and nobody ever seemingly noticed it or cared.
So what happened that you came out of this?
I was very, very fortunate. We lived near water, near a big river, and I had a friend that we knew each other for several years, and we constantly either fought or challenged each other. And unfortunately, before this event, I used to beat him intellectually.
Yeah.
Physically, he beat me every time, but intellectually, I beat him every time. But then when this happened, not only he was beating me physically, but he was beating me intellectually and every other way that you could imagine. So one day when we were sitting on the beach and he was swimming and I had already lost some challenge, I started thinking, this is getting not to be fun and I should do something about this. So I began to start thinking, what can I do to beat him? I have to think of something to beat him just at least once. So I thought of challenging him with telling stories, making stories. So when he came back from the river, I said, I have a challenge. So what is the challenge? He said, I said, you tell a story first, but you gotta make it up. You cannot have it, you read it or anything. You have to make it up right now. And then I'll make my story. He says, well, who's going to be the judge? I said, well, you be the judge. He says, okay. I said, but since you are the judge, you got to start first. He said, all right. So he started telling a story. Of course, he had no idea. He hadn't thought about it or anything. So the story went for maybe a minute and a half, and it was over. Then I started telling this story that went for days and days and days. And I had used his name. It was about this man that falls in love with this boy named same as his. And he was a butcher, and he eventually becomes his lover, and they're having sex and doing this and that. And finally the people find out, and he kidnaps him, finally kills him.
So you created a long story.
Right.
And what did this creating a long story do to you personally?
A lot, because in the middle of the story, he agreed that I have won. So that one winning gave me the idea that maybe I still have something to offer. So I began making up stories. And actually, very shortly, I began writing plays, which later on I produced them and I played in them. But what happened as the result of this, it seemed like I became alive again. It doesn't seem one went is too much, but seems like it did for me.
So after the death of your stepmother, you, through your creation, through your own fantasy,
right,
you felt something flowing again.
Right.
So that you could be more happy, more productive again.
Yes.
So you went on school.
Yes.
And what kind of pupil you were at school?
I always was a good student, except for that 1 year that I failed everything. Not because I was stupid, because I wasn't participating. But then, right at that time, I lived with a family that they told me, when I went back to school that year, I slowly built up. By Christmas, I was top of the class again, and I started helping teachers. So the next year, I was a student assistant. And that summer of 3rd grade going to the 4th grade, the people that I live with, they told me that I have to start making my own money, my own allowances.
So what age were you then?
4 and 6 is about 10. So I started having students. Then when I went back to school, the teacher found out and he gave me 25 students to teach the whole year. Unfortunately, I had one more relapse. My best friend died next to me in the class. He had tuberculosis and nobody knew. And he died, and then I relapsed again, and I was down again, very, very depressed. But then with the aid of the teacher and my brother, I snapped out of it, because they told me that these 25 students are my students. Am I going to take care of them, or I'm going to sit and cry all day? So I told them, no, I'll take care of it. So I snapped out.
And what was your specialty in teaching?
My specialty ever since I started teaching was to find out what is it the child doesn't know. When the child doesn't know how to divide, it is not because he doesn't know how to divide, it's because something before that. If he knew everything up to that point, why couldn't he divide?
So again, looking for the source where the problem started.
Right, that's always I have done that, and all through my teaching, whoever comes to me with any problem, we look for the source. And then once we know the source, we release the source, it resolves itself.
I understood that you lived in Tehran also, and that one day you became really ill and had to go all by yourself as a teenager by train home to your parents.
Yes.
Can you tell me something about that?
Yeah. Well, what happened in 12th grade, I was also not only intellectual, but I was participating in a lot of sports, especially swimming. I was a very, very good swimmer, and I was doing for championship, and my ears got infected, and all the pus went around my throat and was choking me to death. And the doctors thought I was stupid. I didn't know what I was talking about. So actually, I was dying. So the people that I lived with in Tehran, they asked me to go and stay with my mother, because they knew, or they thought I was going to die shortly. So I went in the train. In the train, I became extremely ill, and the doctor told the people that I surely might die. So they got my address and so on. The train would have got to my mother's town about 1 a.m. That night, and very unusual thing, that my father had just come from wherever he was to my mother's town, to the same house, and everybody gone to bed about 9. 10 o'clock, my sister and the rest of the family all were walking in the house. They didn't know what was going on.
And they didn't know that you were on your way home.
Right. Or I was sick or anything. And all of a sudden, my sister discovered intuitively that it was me, but they didn't know how to get a hold of me. But then very shortly, by 1 o'clock, I was home. And that's the first time I discovered that my mother and my father were very, very sad when they saw me, that I was dying. Because the taxi driver told them that the doctor says that I might be dying very shortly.
So was this for the first time that you were aware of their love, or did you know before?
No, I never got along with my mother or father. I never cared for them, and I didn't think they cared for me. Yeah. That's the first time that something really clicked.
And then short after you left for the United States.
Yes, yeah.
What happened there?
Well, I came to the United States. I left Iran with $135. And I traveled by bus and train out of that $135, and then by boat to New York and then to Colorado, which I went to school there. And I continued going to school and working at the same time. It was hard, but it was very rewarding. And eventually I graduated. And during college, I met, by the way, what I should tell you at this point, that from the time that I was like 9 months old till the time that I was in 7th grade, I was not only a good student, but I also was very much interested in metaphysics. I was doing a lot of fasting, a lot of meditation, a lot of those things. But then in 7th grade, again, another friend of mine, very, very close, my last best friend committed suicide, and that really pushed me over the edge. From 7th grade to college, I started going in the wrong direction. I drank and smoked and doped and everything. Anything that it's bad, I did. But then in college, I met a man, was the strongest man in our school, and I had challenged him for wrestling, and he laughed, and we became good friends. And we did a lot of fasting and a lot of studying together, and all of a sudden things start waking up in me again.
So you started to become kind of familiar with meditation, fasting.
Right.
Yes.
I still wasn't really doing a lot of meditation, but I was doing intellectually, I was becoming very interested. And it wasn't until 1967, which another episode took place. What happened, I was a teacher in 1967 and lived in Berkeley, California. At that time, everybody smoked and used drugs, but I didn't. But one day when I came home, there was this big plate of cookies. So I started eating them up and taking my clothes off. By the time I was nude and I was looking at the television, this Black Panther leaped out of the television and over me, and I screamed and ran outside nude. And the people grabbed me and brought me and put my clothes on. But for the next 48 hours, I died approximately 80 times.
What do you mean by I died?
Well, I was walking and I would just collapse. And I would see myself one time being executed with guillotine, one time being executed by hanging, one time, every time was different.
So you could have been experiencing a lot of deaths from, say,
Other
past
lifetime.
lives, or...
Yes,
Right.
yes. But what was so important, that after this episode was over, this episode ended, when I regained consciousness, I sat down, I had become aware of how many wrong things I was doing during this 48 hours. So at that moment that I sat down to write down my problems, it was 2:30 p.m. July 12th of 1967. And I decided...
It sounds like, for you, it was a memorial moment.
Right.
All right.
Yeah, I decided either to commit suicide or do something about my things. And I was very familiar with the suicide. I had attempted 4 suicide before in high school after my friend committed suicide. But it wasn't fun. And it had a permanency that I didn't like.
And could you see a way out?
At the moment, the only thing it was going for me, that I used to have a friend, she was my lover, but we constantly tried to hurt each other. We stole things from each other. We beat each other up. So I stole a book from her called Hidden Powers for Human Problems. And that book really helped me because he was intellectually would tell you all of my problems are thoughts, and thoughts are manageable, and you could correct them. So it was very good. I started making a huge list, maybe 150 items that I had to change.
Did you know also before that thoughts are the source of everything?
Not really.
Which causes the problems?
I kind of knew, but it just like everything else, you learn them and then you learn them again. And then all of a sudden, next time you learn them again, say, wow, I never knew this.
Mm-hmm.
But this was like a huge realization that since everything is thoughts, maybe I could do something about them before I commit suicide.
Yeah.
So.
And I know that before that you also read the book of Yogananda.
Right.
And there you read for the first time about Babaji.
Yes.
Can you tell me something about who he is and what he has
All
been
right.
in your life?
Babaji is my last teacher.
So maybe we should first start with your first teachers.
Okay.
Okay, then we come
my
back.
First 3 teachers came as the result of another lover of mine. I used to think that I was genius, I was most spiritual, I was just God's gift to earth. And my lover would look at me and would say, honey, I love you dearly, but you're not only stupid, but you are also very ignorant, and that's not excusable. So she introduced me to 2 teachers immediately. One of them was Ophir, which was a very great metaphysician and had written many books on tarot, astrology, creativity, oracles, a lot of different books. And he was a great teacher.
And teacher means that you had private sessions or classes or
I
both?
had both. I had a lot of private sessions with him, and I had a lot of group therapy and group sessions. And what he did, he introduced me to 5 designs, and he told me that these 5 geometrical shapes are called tattvas. He asked me, he said he would help me. This man, Ophir, told me he would help me, but I have to pay him. I told him I didn't have money. So I said, okay, then you do a project for me.
So it was a kind of scientific research,
Yes.
what you were doing for him about the tattvas.
The tattvas.
Can you say in a few words, because we will speak more about this
Right.
in the next episodes,
Right.
about what is a tattva, what are tattvas?
Tattvas are, according to Hindus, everything in the universe, from your toenails to the hair on your head to the largest galaxy in the universe, is made of 5 energies. And these 5 energies, the Hindu call them tattvas. And if you know astrology, they would be water, fire, air, earth, and space.
Okay, but we will go on
In detail
later.
Yes.
So Ophir started you off
Right.
with the tattvas.
Yes. And what he wanted me to do, to combine these 1 to 1, 5 times 5 gives you 25, and tell him what the 25 combination mean.
So that was your assignment.
That was my assignment. And I asked him if it would take more than 2 weeks. He said, as smart as I am, who knows? Maybe, maybe not. So it took 18 years.
And here you are.
And here I am.
Who were the other teachers?
Clark was a Huna master, Kahuna. He was a Hawaiian master.
A kind of shaman?
Yes, a Hawaiian shaman. And what he did, every time I saw him, for instance, I called him and I told him that I want to come and see him. He said it would cost $20. So I said, okay. So when I went to his house, he asked me, he came out, shut the door, didn't let me go in his house. He put his hand out, so I gave him his $20. He looked into my eyes and said, you are too motherfucking selfish, go home. And that was it. That was the first session. So I started really being disturbed, and I was just, my head was ding-donging. So I spent 2 weeks seeing what happened. And I started talking to some of the people that they were qualified to do some criticism and start working on it. So I called him again. I went to see him. This time he said, "Tell me some of your thoughts." I said, "I don't have any." He says, "You're too stupid, go home." That was my second session.
So, and you had sessions and classes with him for 3 years?
Yes.
Right.
Yes. But he really tore me down. He was tearing me down. Every time I saw him, he would hit me so hard, and it would take me 2, 3, 4 weeks. Sometimes I would get violently sick. But through this process, and with the aid of my third teacher, which her name was Bernice, she was very, very loving. She would hold me in her arms and hold my hand and meditate with me, and he would tell me what I have to do to change the patterns. So the three of them, intellectually and confrontational and loving care, I start changing very rapidly. And then me and some other friends, we start guru hopping, going to every Hindu gurus and teachers, every night, every weekend we were classes. But then I did not want to have a guru. I knew about Babaji, and I wanted him to be my guru.
How did you know?
Well, the minute I saw him, I recognized him. It just like that. The minute I saw his picture, I recognized him. And then he came in 1970. He came to, not to everybody, but he came to me in 1970 in a herb shop, and he took me outside. He asked me to go outside in the street with him.
So did you know when he came in who he was?
No, I really, at the time, I didn't know who he was, but I knew he was a holy man. Mm-hmm. And when he initiated me, when he says he wants to initiate me, he touched my middle of my forehead, and all of a sudden the light starts shining. Mm-hmm. And he starts using some language that later on I discovered were Sanskrit. So he said certain mantras, and then he said that's over. So we went in, but nobody else saw him but me. And then I asked him, can I see him again? He said he will send for me.
And did he?
Well, yes he did. No, he didn't. I wanted a teacher, and I met a Sufi master, and I spent 45 days every day asking the Sufi master to be my teacher, and he said no.
Why?
He said he didn't want to. But he gave me a mantra. He says, if you repeat it, I will find my teacher, which I did for 2 years. And then I heard one of my students telling the other people that her sister just came from Babaji. So I asked which Babaji, and they told me. So I immediately got his address, and in 5 days I received the answer to my letter. I sent the letter.
Which is physically not possible.
No.
If you send a letter from the States to India, it takes already 10 days
weeks.
and then before it comes back, if
Yes.
it ever arrives there.
Yes.
Okay.
But I got in 5 days, I sent the letter and I got my answer, and I went and saw Baba. And when I saw him, I recognized him as the man that I met in Glendale, California. Yeah. So
what happened to you when you first met him in the body?
Well, what happened first in the body? First of all, Baba, in order for people to really change, okay, let's say a person is a alcoholic. Every cell of this person's body, all 4 billion cells, they are individually alcoholic. So if a person wants not to be an alcoholic, then have to change every cell of the body. Okay?
Yeah.
So in order
to restore.
So in order to do that, either you have to take 40 years, 50 years working on it, or somehow kill more than 50% of your body. And that's what Baba did. Baba had me fast for 72 days on 3 bananas a day.
So you lost some kilos.
Yeah, I lost half of my body, which was more than 40 kilos. And I became very, very skinny. But during the time that I was losing this weight, I was doing a meditation with him every morning, which he told me every meditation was equivalent to 1,000 months of meditating by myself. And all day long, I was meditating and repeating mantras. So by the time the fast was over, I had changed quite a bit of my body. So when I regained my weight, there were new cells with new consciousness.
And could you notice anything about it?
Well, not right away, but people, when I went back home, when I went to the United States, the people start treating me differently. It was very subtle, very, very subtle, but the people around me were different kind of people. Changes later on, when I look back, I notice how a lot of changes had come. But immediately, no, I didn't notice anything, except for loss of weight.
And before you met Baba, I heard that you had 2 initiations, and after you met Baba, you had another initiation.
Yes.
Can you tell me something more about your 3
initiations? Yes. But the first one came as the result of teachings of Clark. Clark, one day, told me I was getting ready to go through the gate. I said, what gate? He said, how would I know? It'll be your gate. And if you're not stupid, and if you're not checking out, which I'm hoping, I'm not sure, but if you don't check it out, you will do good. But if you do check it out, don't come back, because if I see you, I will kill you.
So you were quite motivated
to
finish this job. Okay.
Yes. So one day in my meditation, I saw myself on a desolate planet. Only weed with thorns were growing, and the wind was blowing them all over. And I was going toward a specific direction. As I was walking, I began to walk faster and faster and faster, and I noticed the same Black Panther that came out of the television was on the about maybe 50 feet away, and he was walking and keeping up with my pace. He was keeping me under control. So then all of a sudden I saw this very large gate in front of a garden, and I ran to go, and then I noticed this huge monster, 3-story building tall, very gruesome, standing in front. So I stopped, and I ran back, and I heard my Black Panther growling, and I heard the Clark saying, this is the test, except he always used foul language. So I stopped. I went forward, backward. I couldn't make up my mind. So I finally decided, Clark gonna kill me anyway, so might as well die here. So I decided to go ram him, go right into the center of this monster. And I ran as fast as I could. And before impact, he changed to a butterfly, and I was thrown into the gate out inside the garden, and the gate was shut. So that was the first one.
So freedom.
So the gate was shut, and after that, Clark says his job with me is done. Now I cannot go back. Even if I try, He says it will not happen. I can't go back again.
Did you feel that also, that you only could go straight forward?
No, not really. I wasn't that smart, I don't think. But something else happened very soon. I had been meditating for 3 years. Every night, no exception. And when I would meditate, I would find myself in a dark tunnel with a little bit of light at the end. And when I would try to get to the light, they would shut the gate, so I could not get out for 3 years. Then
So 3 years in a row you meditated on that?
Yes. Okay. And then one night when I was meditating with Bernice in her class with a group of people, I found myself in the tunnel again. And this time I heard somebody said, go to the left. And I looked, was a crack in a wall. So I started going sideways through this crack, and about a couple of kilometers or more or less, I came to this big opening, and it was a chimney. Light was shining through. So I went under the light to see what was going on, and I was sucked out. And I was very quickly, I started flying from mountain to mountain. And I decided to sit on one of the mountains. As I sat, I noticed somebody was coming up behind me. It was a very old man with a container, and he gave me a smaller container and filled it up with liquid light. And then he said, pointed out toward down in the canyon. So I floated down. There was a river, and there were hundreds of people in black suit, white shirt, black bow tie, and the women all in white nightgown, beautiful, dressed very beautifully. So, and each had a cup, and I went and give them some of the liquid. That was when I told Bernice after the meditation that what has happened. He said her job was done now.
So this was the second teacher who said, I can leave, you can go on now.
Yeah.
So what happened to the third teacher?
The third teacher, the third one was not on physical reality. Well, first of all, I have to tell you this, that for many years, every time I meditated, I was told that I have to become a metaphysical teacher. And I told them, no, I like women. I like to go on a beach and just play. And they said, no, you got to become a metaphysical teacher. No, I don't. So finally, one morning, I begged them to let me go, release me. They said no. Actually, the voice said, for an intelligent man, I'm very stupid.
Because you ought to listen to the voice.
Right. They said 1 million teachers have helped me to get to where I am. There is no way that this would not go on. So the best thing to do it. So I said, okay, I'll do it under 2 conditions. Number 1, I only want teachers as my student. And secondly, that I want to be taken care of. They said, okay. So then shortly after I start teaching.
So for many years, everything is provided to you, right, and your pupils are becoming teachers.
Right. But the third teacher that I had, this huge big shift again, is after I met Baba. I came back, and for 180 days I repeated a mantra which would take 9 hours a day for 180 days. But on 120th day in my meditation, I saw a man, very old man, and he said, I just gave you what you wanted. And what I wanted was a system by which nobody has done before.
You wanted to invent something new.
Yes, totally something that nobody has done. And of course, I didn't become aware of it. In 1979, when I saw Baba again, when I was leaving, I said, Baba, what do you want me to do? He said, write. Of course, I did not want to write. But in 1985, when I finished the chart of elements, which is those combination that Ophil gave me, the 25. I put them in a chart like chemistry. When I completed that, then I began to design mandalas, and within 6 months, I wrote 12 books, produced them, sold them, and gave workshops on them. So 1985 was the beginning of, or the end and the beginning. I finished with the research, and I start traveling and giving workshops and talking about the 5 elements.
Which give you fulfillment, probably. Otherwise, you wouldn't have been doing this for such a long time.
Yeah, I have done now 4,000 mandalas, so it must be very fulfilling. Yes.
When we spoke before together, you spoke also about your meeting with Jack Schwartz. This was a Jew.
Yes.
Who you met, who inspired you to...
Yes, when I went to his class, the first day that I went, I was late. And he looked at me and he says, "Oh, you're late again." I said, "This is my first time. I've never been late." He says, "No, in Egypt you did that all the time. You were late all the time." So his class were all the students were doctors, physicians. I was the only one. I don't know how did I get in. I have no idea, but I was a student. And what happened, one day, one of the doctors raised his hand and Jack Schwartz acknowledged him. And he said, night before, he had a question and he knew that Jack Schwartz knew the answer. Werner Erhard knew the answer, but he couldn't get a hold of them. And then he said, "Oh, Emahmn knows the answer." And while he was thinking of how to get a hold of me, to phone me, I appeared right next to him and answered him, and he thanked me, and I left. And he wanted to know if he was making it up or he was telling the truth. He says, "No, you are not making it up." After a certain stage, the being's spirit could appear and answer. So this was like a big step for me, that I know, that I knew now I'm at a place that I really could help people.
And that you were aware of your telepathic capacities?
Yes.
And how to...
Not only telepathic, but teleportation and other quality that goes with it.
Yeah.
And
you also met one time a Sufi master.
Oh, the Sufi master. This Sufi master is the one that I told you I spent 45 days begging for to be my teacher, but he said no. But after he left his body, this television screen opened up right in front of me and he popped in as though like I'm talking to you right now. He appeared like this to me and he answered my question, and since then whenever I have a problem, well, he has appeared 3 times now, very crucial moments, and he has given me instructions.
Which you can use in your workshops.
Yes, that's what I've been doing.
Yeah.
And that's what I do. I go around the country, travel, whoever wants me, I go to wherever I'm invited. That's how I got to come here. I was invited by some people that they did not know me. So I came to give a workshop.
And I think we would be delighted if you would come back to Amsterdam to give workshops, and whoever is interested in them can send a message to your email.
Yes.
And they can apply.
Okay.
Thank you very much for this interview.
Thank you very much.
Is there anything you wanted to say which we didn't speak about?
No. Everything is okay. We have said quite a bit. And I'm really grateful for you folks inviting me here. I've been treated like a king since I've been here. And I appreciate it. And I would love to come back again sometime.
Okay.
Thank
Because you completed the charge of elements, which you were speaking about in 85, and from that point on you worked on as a teacher, and that's what you are going to tell more about in the next episode.
Yes.
Okay,
Yes,
thank you
that's
very much.
Thank you.